Did you know that not only the last remains of the Berlin Wall are a clear hallmark of the former divide of the city, but that the current tram network also shows clear signs of this divide? So, let's check it out. Berlin was the first place in Germany to introduce the horse-drawn tram as far back as 1865, on a route that ran between Brandenburger Tor and Charlottenburg Palace. Not much later, in 1879, a famous German engineer called Werner von Siemens proved the working electric traction at a trade fair. After that, von Siemens acquired an unused railway as a test ground for his invention, an electrical tram for public use. Von Siemens' public tram line became the first electrical tram in the world, when it opened on the 16th of May in 1881. The power supply was oddly enough not through an overhead wire, or third rail, but through the existing rails, which is roughly like a model train. This concept proved impractical, as the voltage could not be as high, and it led to some incidents where people or horses got an electrical shock by accidentally closing the circuit. By 1883, electrical wires were put up, and this proved to be the way forward. In 1902, most of the network was electrified by this method, and in 1910, the last horse-drawn tram ran in Berlin. After that, the network grew at an absolutely massive pace, and so did the number of small tram companies that built lines each. Before the First World War, some companies alone already had networks that were larger than today's still very impressive network. But this also led to an absolute uncoordinated mess. Throughout the 1920s, after Greater Berlin formed its own entity, a great effort went into better coordination, merger and standardization. In 1927, the Berliner Verkehrsaktiegesellschaft, or BVG, was formed, as a single transport agency for Berlin. It oversaw a network at the time of 634 kilometers, operated by 89 lines. The 1930s saw the beginning of the decline, alongside the economic crisis and the takeover by the National Socialists. The first line closures took place due to falling ridership, or for ideological purposes. However, somewhat later, World War II arrived, and this was utterly devastating for the tram system, as the various air raids wreaked havoc. Nevertheless, trams got high ridership during the war, as there were few alternatives. Also, freight was transported on the network. After the war, the network was quite quickly restored, as by the end of 1946 most of the network was back online. But this was not for long. As the city became divided, so did the tram system. With the introduction of two different currencies within the city and the subsequent Berlin blockade, the tram system split in two. And so did the BVG. Some last, very limited cross-border operations disappeared with the construction of the Berlin Wall. For West Berlin, this was the start of the dissolution of the entire tram network, a mistake that many Western countries made. West Berlin focused mostly on U-Bahn development, as described in my video about that system. The last tram ran in 1967. East Berlin kept its trams, but as they aimed to reshape the city, the tram system saw a decline here too. New housing development eventually led to the expansion of the system. And then, finally, there was the reunification of Germany. This meant that the BVG was reunited too. Trams returned to West Berlin not much later, by opening of a new route in 1995. Although progress was slow, the network has been enhanced for better connections to stations and important places within the city. Which brings us to the network of today. As you can clearly see on this map, Berlin's tram system is mostly located in what used to be East Berlin, while West Berlin is mostly empty, except for a few bits of track. As of today, the network consists of 181 kilometers. It does so while using 1435mm standard gauge and 5 depots. Trams are nowadays powered by 750 volts DC overhead wires. Before we go to the network structure, it is good to know that Berlin has two types of tram service. Lines with the prefix M are so-called metro trams, which have generally a higher frequencies than regular routes. The first of these metro tram lines is line M1, which runs between Am Kupfergraben to Rosenthal Nord or Niederschönhausen-Schillerstraße. And this is immediately a good case to say that sometimes the tram lines have an alternating terminus. And then we continue on with line M2, between Alexanderplatz and Heinesdorf, which is followed by one of the most busy tram routes in Berlin, line M4, which runs from Hackescher Markt to Falkenberg or Hohenschönhausen-Singsterstraße. followed by line M5 from Hauptbahnhof to Hohenschönhausen-Zingsche line M6 Hackesche Markt to Hellersdorf-Riesaerstraße. Line M8 Hauptbahnhof to Ahrensfelde Stadtgrenze. The recently extended line M10 between Turmstraße and Warschaustraße. Line M13 between Wedding Virchow Klinikum to Warschaustraße. But please keep in mind that this is a different terminus than line M10. And then finally, to close off the metro tram routes, line M17 between Falkenberg and Adlershof. Then we move on to the regular tram routes. We start with line 12 between Am Kupfergraben and Weißensee-Pasewalkplatz. Line 16 Frankfurter Allee to Ahrensfelde Stadtgrenze. Followed by line 18, Virchowstraße to Hellersdorf-Riesaerstraße. Line 21 between Lichtenberg and Schöneweide. Line 27, Weißensee-Pasewalkplatz to Krankenhaus Köpenick. Line 37 between Lichtenberg and Schöneweide along a different route than line 21. Line 50 Wedding Virchow Klinikum to Französisch Buchholz, Guyotstraße. Line 60 Johannisthal Heckelstraße to Friedrichshagen Altes Wasserwerk. Line 61 Schöneweide to Ransdorf Waldschenke. Line 62 Maasdorf to Wendenschloss. Line 63 between Adlershof Landschaftspark Johannisthal to Maasdorf-Ransdorfer Straße. Line 67 between Schöneweide and Krankenhaus Köpenick. And then we have the final one of the 22 tram lines, line 68 between Köpenick and Alt-Schmöckwitz. This video about the tram system of Berlin is part of an already 26 episode long series of public transport systems. I would love to show you many more in the future, therefore it would be really helpful if you like my video and subscribe to my channel. Let's now take a look at the fleet. Even though Berlin has one of the largest tram networks in the world, the fleet is surprisingly harmonized, with only two main types in the active fleet. The oldest type in the modern fleet is the GT6N, built by Adtranz, all consisting of 3 cars. All of the GT6Ns were delivered by 2003, and they have the capability to be coupled with each other, which allows for much higher capacity on certain routes. The GT6N has 2 different variants, unidirectional and bidirectional. The second and the newest type in the current fleet is the Bombardier Flexity Berlin. This type has been a custom design for Berlin and has also received different configurations to deal with the tram network's characteristics. There are 34 5-car bidirectional trams, 40 unidirectional 7-car trams and 157 bidirectional trams of the same length. So how many people use the tram system of Berlin? The tram system of Berlin has, according to the latest figures of 2023, an annual ridership of 177.2 million passengers. This would result in a daily ridership of about 485,000. It might not be the highest ridership seen on this channel, but we will have to keep in mind that the tram system only covers a part of Berlin, and that a couple of lines mostly operate in the more suburban area of Köpenick. So what will the future hold? Actually, Berlin is aiming to build a lot of new tram infrastructure in the coming years. As you can see on this map, trams will be solidly present again in West Berlin, with a lot of new sections planned here. As a part of this plan, the section to U-Bahn station Turmstraße has been opened in 2023, but at the moment, the other section that will emerge will be the opening of a rerouting of line 21, making it connect much better to the major station of Berlin Ostkreuz. And as the network is growing and the GT6 ends are aging, Berlin is about to receive new trams. These trams will be an evolution on the existing Flexity Berlins, which were built by Bombardier. As Alstom took over Bombardier's transportation division, the second generation of Flexities will be built by Alstom. There will be two variants, a 5-car version and a 9-car version. The total order consists of 117 trams. And with that, we have reached the end of this video about the trams of Berlin. Watch over here for the U-Bahn of Berlin. And as always, thank you very much for watching.